So let's start off with a small introduction of why this situation and why we are here. As you all know, Hamfest has been happening quite regularly, right from the first time that happened in Kerala, right up to the last session, which unfortunately didn't happen at Kanyakumari. So we have had some amazing strength of activities all through, and this Hamfest has been an event where hams all over the country used to come up, talk, exchange eyeball, exchange information, thrift market, sell, a whole lot of things used to happen. We were very happy that all of you have selected Mysore to be to host the Hamfest 2021. But we all of you know very well, due to the pandemic, it was just unfortunate that we couldn't have the Hamfest in its physical form, the face-to-face. So we thought we will have a virtual Hamfest sometime now, today, tomorrow, and things like that. And the organizing committee, all of them are here. Madhu and Kesari, Mike Tango Kilo, Saravanan, Echo Tango Sierra, and Ramas SMX, some other friends in Mysore Amateur Radio Club and all. We decided that let's have one event here today and tomorrow, and why not have a physical session sometime in April or May. The reason for it is, as Madhu said at the beginning, it's 100 years of amateur radio. The first license was got in 1921. So this being the 100th year of amateur radio, we thought to commemorate that. And we also spoke to our friends at the ARSI, who gave all the support to us and said, let's commemorate this event. So now we have decided, everyone here out there, to commemorate that 100 years of amateur radio in our country, and to honor those pioneers who have been there then, who have been there now, and who have been helping us, the ham fraternity. And let's also get to know, for the new timers here may not be knowing what's happening, what was happening earlier, which was actually Madras was there, Bangalore was very active, from Bombay was very active. To know all about it and to know more about it, let's go over to our very first session of our program here, and that's the Fireside Chat. And for this Fireside Chat, we couldn't have rather had any better than two of the hams from the neighboring states, VU2 Tango Sierra, the senior most, I should say, here amongst us. He stays at BR Hills. BR Hills is quite near to Mysore and Bangalore. And we also have VU2GMN, Golf Mike November, Gopal Madhavan. So we have two pioneers here who are who have seen it all, I should say. And Gopal Madhavan, being with ARSI, was also part of the IARU representing our country. So on behalf of all of you, let's not waste much time here. Delighted to welcome VU2 Tango Sierra, Old Man Ganesh, and VU2 Golf GMN, Mike November, Golf Mike November. Sorry about that, GMN. So delighted to have you both. So what I'll do is I'll leave the floor to both of you, Ganesh and Madhavan. And I also see quite a lot of activity on YouTube. A lot of people who are watching, and I'm sure you will have many more, much questions as the programs start. Keep your questions coming in. We will keep a note of it. My other fellow ham from Mysore, Surya is there, Madhu is there. We'll be looking at all the questions that will come up, and we'll try and answer them. So with that, I leave the stage to VU2 Tango Sierra Ganesh and GMN Gopal Madhavan. Over to you, Ganesh.
Thank you, Shankar. You can hear me all right?
Oh, yes, perfect.
Very good. Very good evening to you. Very good evening to all the participants. And good evening to Omkar Naji, who's with us today. It's a pleasure to be with you. And thank you all for joining in. And I would like to mention for people who may not know me personally. My name is Ganesh, and my call sign is VU2 Tango Sierra. And I live in BR Hills, Piligiri Ranganapetta, about 100 kilometers east of Mysore. Okay, now we all heard that the first amateur license was issued in 1921, and the second one was issued in 1922, felicitating first two-way communications on ham radio in the country. 40 years afterwards, there were only 349 licenses issued for 40 years. And the 350th license was mine, VU2 Tango Sierra, HI. I received the license in 1965, and I've been active for the past 56 years. And I have noticed tremendous development in ham radio in general, all over the world, and also in India particularly. And I'm very happy about that, and I'm enjoying every moment of these years that I've been a ham. As I said, I've seen some phenomenal achievements in the hobby, especially by VU2 hams. When I received the license, there were only two modes of operation. One was CW, that is Morse, and the other was AM, amplitude modulation. The Morse code, I think, is it got emission type A1, and AM is emission type A3. This is the only two modes are available, so things were very simple those days. And I guess some history is in order. I need to mention the old-timers who were extremely active in the 50s and 60s on AM and CW. Stalwarts like VU2 Kilowatt Bravo, Cabra G, he was in the army, from Mo in Madhya Pradesh. VU2 Charlie Quebec from Bombay, I forget his name. VU2 PP, VU2 Papa, his name is Paranj Pe from Nagpur. VU2 Charlie Kilowatt, Karnik from New Delhi. VU2 Romeo Alpha from Tumkur in Karnataka. VU2 Juliet Alpha, Joe Faithful from Bangalore. And VU2 Bravo Yankee, Old Man Karan from Calicut, who were all very active those days, and we used to monitor them regularly. I cannot remember all the names and call signs, so I'm sure I've left out some. I'm sorry about that. Most of us newcomers in the early 60s learned operating procedures by listening to these gentlemen hams. They are the ones who showed us that the ham radio will put the whole world in your pocket. And the propagation used to be so good those days. These old-timers used to work DX with ease, but very well known throughout the world. Some of you will understand when I tell you, I used to hear these old-timers work in the United States with about 50 watts on the transmitter and a dipole antenna. Unheard of these days. Now with that, I'll pass it to Gopal to see what he has to add. VU2GMN. Please go ahead, Gopal.
Thank you, Ganesh. As Shankar said,
Become old.
I came into ham radio, even though I have a nephew of VU2BY Karan from Calicut, who has the 6th call sign in India. I sort of procrastinated, delayed, till it's only in the early 80s that I got my license. But I got very active after that. And then along with that, came with the becoming active with the organization, etc. Yesterday, when we had a quick chat with Madhu and Shankar and Ganesh, decided that after Ganesh gives us some information about what happened in the early days, I will probably take over and say what happens in my position and to work with ARSI, IARU, etc. The Amateur Radio Society of India is the organization recognized by or affiliated to the IARU to represent Indian amateurs to their government and else outside India. It's part of the International Amateur Radio Union, which is a body, worldwide body, which was started in 1925 to be able to represent the interests of hams. It's around that time when shortwave was becoming active and people became aware of the fact that with reasonably sized antennas and power, which you could use at your own homes, you could communicate all over the world. That time, the amateurs wanted somebody to voice their opinion and make their opinion heard, and therefore the IARU was formed. It became affiliated to the International Telecommunication Union, which, as you all know, controls the spectrum worldwide. It's they who control the spectrum, and spectrum to us is like air to a human being. If you have no air, you don't breathe. If we have no spectrum, we cannot communicate. So IRU throughout the world looks upon itself as the spokesman to voice the concerns of radio amateurs, to protect the frequencies that we have, and to try and get more frequencies which for use by radio amateurs. Quite a lot has been achieved, and I'm sure if you look it up, you'll find I don't want to waste time by saying what are the various things, but what are the most significant things where the use of obtaining of the expansion of the 7 megahertz and also the WRC bands a few years ago. So back to you, Ganesh. Ganesh?
Okay, thank you, Gopal. Thank you for passing it to me. Now, I'll go back to the 100 years of ham radio. The import of ham radio equipment were unheard of those days, in my days, and everyone had to make their own transmitter and receiver. But as soon as I got my license, I found out that making a receiver is not easy. Making a good communications receiver is not easy, sensitive one. So that was left to experts like people who are known as home brewers, and who are experts in building their own transmitters and receivers. But building a transmitter wasn't so difficult. So I built my first transmitter and then used the World War II surplus receiver. In fact, most of us were using World War II surplus receivers those days. So that was the condition. And those receivers are even now considered as, like vintage receivers, and some people are using those receivers still. And then we go on to the modes of operation. As I said earlier, there are only 2 modes, CW and AM. SSB was popular, showed up sometime in the mid-70s, I think. We could hear some DX stations operating on SSB. The current emission is J3E, Juliet 3 Echo. And the newcomers to this hobby were not aware of single sideband transmission. They called it the Donald Duck mode because they did not know how to resolve the audio on their receivers, and so it sounded garbled. It was in the early 80s or so that import of ham gear was kindly permitted by the Ministry of Communications, and Indian radio amateurs could import ham transceivers without paying any custom duty. This was really a big boost to amateur radio in India because by that time there was no more war supplies available easily. All along, ham stations in India had a transmitter and the receiver separately. But when the imported equipment started arriving, they were all modern transceivers, all combined into one. Small, compact equipment which you could easily carry for field days or emergency operations, which was not possible in the earlier days. Needless to mention, the quality of signals also improved tremendously with commercial transceivers because they were built professionally. So with more number of hams getting on the air, we had the clubs coming up all over the country. The early 80s saw the entry of VHF into India, and we amateurs in Bangalore were the first ones to communicate on VHF in the country. And soon we had the first repeater station in India, VU2 Radio Sierra Bravo, RSB, situated on Nandi Hills, elevated about 5,000 feet above sea level, which gives a good coverage of almost all of South India. This was followed by more repeaters, and now I think we have some 4 VHF repeaters in Bangalore, located in some strategic locations, so they cover the whole city and then some. I'll pass it back to you, Gopal. We have to golf Mike November. Please go ahead with your TS.
Thank you, Ganesh. Well, as Ganesh said, the ham radio has expanded quite exponentially in India, and more and more people are getting their licenses and operating. We have to really take our hats off to the WPC, because we started off with regulations which went back several decades when amateur radio was not very active. There were more restrictions than permissions. So over a period of time, we have been able to work with WPC and get them to change the regulations so much so that we are able to use our equipment freer and get our licenses quicker. And of course, there are many things still to be done, and I'm wondering if Omkarnath is still there. We have some pending issues which I think is best be taken up in writing, and I can help Ramesh to put together a little document which needs to be sent to WPC. And I'm pretty sure that the way that Revati Madam and Omkarnath and Devendra are working with us, we will have no difficulty in getting these things sorted out over a period of time. Well, IRU continues to be a very active arm of all of us, working for all of us. And even now, there are meetings, online meetings going on where items are being discussed for the next World Radio Conference in 23, or called WRC 23, where more items are which will benefit hams worldwide are going to be taken up, and we are pushing forward to it. We have to work with our local organizations, the regional organizations, like Asia Pacific Telecommunity for the Asia Pacific region, which is based in Bangkok. And we were able to, after a long time, get a memorandum of understanding signed with APT, which gives us a little bit more impetus for working with them. So these are the things that we need to continue doing, and I'm sure Ramesh will take it up with us hereafter, and we will be able to get a little bit more changes, minor changes really, which are minor changes which will bring our licensing more in line with worldwide regulations as it exists. Thank you.
Yes, Ganesh, go ahead. Talking of 100 years of amateur radio, also, brings us quite a lot of memories of importing the equipment. And as JMN was telling the other day, we still don't have a shop where we can walk in, just like a Radio Shack in the US or any other place. So, and you were the first to start one company in Bangalore to sell amateur radio equipment. Tell us more about that experience, Ganesh. That's an interesting experience.
Was it for me? Because I was quite able to understand the question. The voice was very low. It's for Ganesh, I think. Go ahead.
Yeah, can I go ahead, Gopal? Yeah. Okay. Now, Shankar, you wanted me to relate some of the experience that we had of importing the equipment. Well, actually, in the beginning, it was very difficult to import the equipment, even though WPC had given us the license to import. The customs were not very clear as to whether it was legal or not legal. And so we had a lot of explaining to do to them, both by correspondence and by personally meeting the customs officials, showing them the license. So after about a year or so, after a few initial imports, it became fairly easy. But even then, we had some problems, like they were seeing between lines. For instance, once when I imported some HF equipment for myself, the catalog said the 160 meters is between 1.5 megahertz to 3 megahertz or whatever. But the license says 1.8 megahertz to 1.95 or whatever. So there was a difference between the two. So the customs said that they can't clear it because it doesn't match the license. So we had to explain to them it's the commercially manufactured equipment used all over the world, and they will not be using the specifications of what has been allotted to us in India. So we have been allotted a certain frequency. So the equipment will have a little more than that. And the hams, of course, are so disciplined that they will not misuse it by using it on higher frequency. It is no use for them. And so on that basis, finally, they kind of agreed and delivered the equipment, etc. So these are some of the small difficulties we had. Otherwise, it was perfectly okay. Everybody was very happy, and a lot of equipment was imported into India. And because of that, many hams came on the air as well. Over to you, Shankar.
Yeah. Thanks, Ganesh. That's pretty interesting. The initial days of late 80s, I had seen you in Bangalore. I'm sure GMN will also share his experience. Of course, he will continue with Ramesh later on about his experience of how IARU frequency allocation, how does it work, GMN?
Well, IARU was, as you said, formed around 1925 to look after the interests of amateur radio. It is split in the same format from the way ITU is done. 3 geographical regions. Region 1 is the Europe, Africa, Middle East, and South Africa. Region 2 is the Americas, North and South America. Region 3 is the Asia Pacific region. We come under Region 3, and our headquarters of Region 3 is in Tokyo. Our JRL, or Japan Amateur Radio League, hosts our secretariat, and they also provide the secretary to the directors. The directors are elected once in 3 years. The election took place just a few months ago, and they come from all parts of Asia Pacific. When you go into the IARU itself, the IARU is governed by an administrative council. The administrative council consists of the president, the vice president, the secretary and treasurer, and 2 representatives from each of the 3 IARU regions. There will be 2 from region 3, 2 from region 2, and 2 from 1. I had the privilege of serving on the AC for almost 8 years when I was a director of IARU. And they, again, are meeting now online. So they were supposed to meet in person every year at the time of the regional conferences. The Region 3 conference was supposed to have been in Bangkok, but it could not take place, and they had a virtual conference. So again, everything is done like that. The IARU again is constantly working towards getting us more privileges worldwide. Thanks, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry on that. Ganesh, you wanted to add something for this? Before we start taking questions from the panel or the other hand, anything you wanted to add, Ganesh?
No, nothing specific, because the time allotted was quite small. So I just concluded that in my last over itself. Over.
Okay, thanks, Ganesh. So quite a bit of, I should say, experience for both of you for almost about more than about 6 decades of amateur radio in India. So we will now open up for any questions from our fellow hams across the country to GMN and VU2TS. Any questions that you would like to, clarifications or questions that you would like to ask any one of you, please? I'll just mute my video so that I can save the bandwidth.
Shankar, we'll have to wait for a few minutes because there's a lag on YouTube. We'll have to see if this anything comes up from YouTube also. So we'll have to wait for a couple of minutes.
Sure. We will factor in that time lag. Dr. Kailash Gupta, I think an old timer has a question. Please go ahead, old man.
Okay, thank you very much. Namaste to everybody. First of all, I am Dr. Kailash Gupta, Victor Uniform 2 Kilo India Zulu, and American call sign KG6 SQR, Sierra Quebec Romeo. My question is related to, that before asking the question, I want to just give brief that the government of India took initiative and started coalition of disaster resilient infrastructure, which
I think we will speak about that tomorrow, Dr. Kailash. If you have any questions to TS or GMN.
Okay, question. Can I ask related question or not?
Related, anything to ham is most welcome, sir.
Okay, so my question is, okay, I'll not talk about the project and everything. My question is, in USA, like some of the emergency operation centers, there are already amateur radio stations are there established, ham clubs. Why can't in India, we in the emergency operation center, we have amateur radio stations established at the government cost, and hams can go and learn and get license, and when disaster, they can help in restoration of emergency communication. That's all. That's the question to
GMN can take up that.
Okay, thank you, Kailash. Well, I am aware of the way the ARAC, Amateur Radio Emergency Communication, works in America. The ARRL itself has a couple of roomfuls of equipment. I've seen it myself, a couple of roomfuls of equipment is available. See, to set up permanent locations for emergency communications is difficult because we don't have the place to do that. We have to do it in our houses or somebody's office. In Chennai, we wanted to set up a station at the collector's office. We knew we can't leave equipment there because it will disappear. At least we wanted to have the antennas ready, so in case of an emergency, we just pick up a radio, pick up a battery, and go there and operate. A few months later, we found all the wires had been stolen, taken away, so we had to start all over again. So it is not easy in India to have permanent locations for emergency communication. It has to be done by individuals. We have in ARSI what we call grab kits, where all the equipment required for an emergency station is available in a backpack. All you require is a battery and a radio. All the wires for making an antenna, all the coaxial cables, connectors, everything, basic tools, everything is there. And those are spread out all over the country for people to pick up and use. They have been used also. So unfortunately, Kailash, we are not able to find. In Bangalore, we wanted to have a station in the Red Cross Society. We even with the donated equipment, we set up a station with antennas and radios, etc. A few months later, we found that they locked the room and made it into a storeroom. And so everything was wasted. We had to pick it up and bring it back again, piece by piece. I believe one vertical antenna donated by old man Robert is still on the roof there, which we're not able to bring back.
Okay. Thanks, GMN, for that. Anybody else has any questions to TS and GMN? Okay, any questions? Let me check up the YouTube. As you all know, we are streaming this session on YouTube also, and there's quite a lot of there's a huge numbers here. Let me have a look at the YouTube. Have any questions? There's some Tangavel TSS. It's quite interesting. I had visited Digitronics way back to visit VU2TS. So that's one more. VU2 USA is out there. There's quite a lot from YouTube. So if there are no questions, I think we will request Madhu. Are you there?
Yeah, I'm back.
Yeah, thanks, Madhu. You can kindly close the sessions. Thank each one of them and carry on, Madhu. You can go ahead. It's all you.
Okay, thank you, Ganesh, and thank you, Gopal, for giving us that brief walk through history of amateur radio and the Indian association with the IARU and ITU regions. It is a pleasure. Thank you, Ganesh. Thank you, Gopal. Anything for the closing remarks, Ganesh?
No, nothing. Thank you all very much for listening. And thanks for giving me this opportunity to talk to all of you. I wish you all the best there. Thank you.
Thank you, Ganesh. Gopal?
Thank you very much to all of you, Ganesh and Shanks and Madhu and all listening in, Dr. Kailash. I'll be around for a little while when I need to sign off and go get lost somewhere else. But maybe I will join in on some other sessions. Thanks so much for inviting us, and we look forward to more interactions. Thank you and bye.
Okay, thank you, Gopal. Thank you for the nice discussion there, a panel talk, and you can certainly keep it continued in touch with through the YouTube link that has been shared out in quite a few groups. We'll send you a link directly also. So if you are not going to be in front of the computer, you can continue on your YouTube link there. So we can now, I think, move on to the next session, which is